So next on the chopping block for the Thanksgiving banner should be Nero Caster, and she may or may not already be out depending on when this video actually goes live on the channel, but if it's a day early and it helps you guys kind of get prepared on if you want to summon for the servant or not, that's all fine by me. You know, a day early is not going to hurt nobody, unless it's like the Doman thing where I drop the video and then he doesn't come out for like 5 more days. Then I just feel like a big goofus over here, just kind of like holding my Doman video being like, well, he's not exactly out yet, but Nero Caster is one of those servants that I've really enjoyed using. I think very highly of this servant, especially after I got her NP2. Don't think that I was some shill and that I was playing with her for like NP2 for years. I had her at NP1 for most of the time that I've had my account, and just recently snagged that bonus copy on a GSSR, and I can tell you that while her performance is a lot better at NP2, go figure, she still performed very well for me at NP1, and so you know what, I'm going to be brimming with compliments for this video. Plus, it's Nero, how could you afford to not give her a compliment? Before we actually begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. Also, usually when I'm not on vacation, you can tell that I'm still on vacation because the audio quality is way different than it normally is. But when I'm not on vacation, I stream every weekday at about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on my Twitch, which will be linked down in the description down below. With all that being said, let's go ahead and just start diving into Nero's kit, starting off with her hits. And I think, again, very similarly to Ereshkigal in the last video, you want to get drawn in to Nero's 2 big, voluptuous arts cards. Gets your mind out of the gutter, alright? She's got 2 very powerful arts cards with 6 hits apiece, but she's rocking slightly less NP gain than Ereshkigal at 0.40%. However, this is still okay because, like Ereshkigal, she has the passive 11% art buff, and she actually does have an NP gain ability, but, well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. Hers is a little more finicky than Ereshkigal, so while you can get some absolutely insane NP refund turns with Nero, it's going to be a little bit more conditional in comparison to someone like Ereshkigal, who we just covered. But do you know what else I really love about Nero? You guys already see it. You know I'm going to talk about it. That 6-hit extra attack. And we haven't gone over the extra attack in a little bit, and we've gotten some new viewers, so maybe they're not informed on the fact that the extra attack is a composite card that gens stars NP and does big boy damage, and with 6 hits, you're going to really be able to capitalize on that extra little bit of NP gain, that little bit of extra star gen, and would you believe me if I told you that little bit of extra damage? Although the damage really isn't affected by the hits, but it would kind of affect the whole bit I'm doing right now if I didn't just at least mention it. Overall, Nero's hits are just pretty decent, with like the main draw being the arts cards, as long as the second part of her first skill actually pops off. Otherwise, she's just kind of rocking some pretty nice hits, like nothing super insane, but she'll definitely be able to get the job done. Double Buster cards mean that in Buster Brave Chains with her NP, she can do some pretty nasty crits if you're using her with like Merlin or Kolyanskaya. The double arts cards help her stay a bit consistent. But you guys know the big money is in the skills, so let's go ahead and start off by talking about skill 1, and this is going to be a 50% battery. And as we talked about with Ereshkigal in yesterday's video, a 50% battery is good for a multitude of different reasons. Not only is it really good for buster farming, that is exactly who Kolyanskaya wants to be paired with when it does come to buster farming, but it's also really nice for challenge quests, right? A lot of bosses are going to try to drain your NP, or you're just not going to get optimal turns. Sometimes, like in one of the gameplays you'll see that's going on in the background, you don't find your Nero arts card in an arts chain for like 3 turns in a row. So having a 50% battery to at least help you out and just supercharging your NP is always very, very nice. Now, she does have this bonus effect that I did mention, that if her HP is 50% or less, she gets a 50% NP gain buff for 3 turns. Now, keep in mind, she will proc this buff for herself, it just won't go live until her HP goes below 50%. So that's why, like, sometimes if you've pressed this skill, you've noticed that her little NP gain thing kind of goes up, but it's like darkened. That's because you haven't met the prerequisites of being below 50% HP. So it's kind of nice that you don't just waste it immediately. So if you ever do fall below like 50% HP, you can just kind of clap back and get the buff. But at the same time, you got to be below 50% HP, which is not going to be super likely in FGO, right? You know, you're either at like full HP or you're probably getting blasted by one of these insanely powerful bosses and getting nuked into the ground. Now, Nero does have some ways to actually kind of guarantee herself this buff technically if you want to play around it and be a little bit risky, but we'll talk about that more when we get to the third skill. Overall, this skill is insanely powerful just off the merit that it's a 50% battery. Any servant that has a 50% battery is generally going to be really nutty broken. because it just frees you up to do a lot of degenerate stuff when it comes to team setups. Moving over to her second skill, this is where some of the magic starts to happen. This is kind of one of those skills that you just always want to have active on Nero, because it's just generic good stuff. Instead of getting the really broken Imperial privilege, but that's also kind of tied to the random factor of her, getting the actual buff success rate off, they gave her a little bit more of a modest buff, but it's always guaranteed, and it comes with a nice perk of giving her defensive class disadvantage against people like Riders, Berserkers, and Alter Egos, while also just giving her the nice 30% attack and defense buff, as opposed to the 44% of Imperial privilege. So this is going to make Nero a little thick, a little tanky, I mean thicker than she already is, and also allow her to do some pretty good damage. Spoiler alert, Nero does have different buff types on her kit, so she's able to kind of gas up her damage a little bit, especially if you give her anybody around her that can give her a buster buff to guarantee that she gets the trifecta of buster damage. That being your buster buff, your NP damage buff, and your attack buff. She at least gives herself 2 of those. But this in and of itself is just a really, really solid skill. You want to have this up pretty much at all times, and on a low 5-turn cooldown, with the skills actually lasting for 3 turns of those 5 turns, you can pretty much guarantee that you'll always have this buff up. You could say that it kind of conflicts with her first skill, but I kind of see it in a way that this allows her to kind of like slowly ease into being at 50% HP, because she'll be a little thicker with that 30% defensive buff. So that way, whenever you get to lower points of her HP, she doesn't just immediately die, right? I kind of see it as a good like combo piece for that, instead of just being like, well, we got hit once and now we're at 50%, the next hit is going to kill us. At least for Nero, it's like she could take a couple of other hits and kind of enjoy the benefits of that NP gain buff that she could potentially get on her first skill. The third skill, though, is what I meant by saying that you can kind of force it, because she has a guts that is targetable and gives whoever you smack this buff on a 3-turn guts that revives them with 1 HP and gives them a massive 50% attack buff for 3 turns on a 7-turn cooldown. Now, what do I mean that you can kind of force it with this? Well, if you know like a big hit is going to be coming your way and you know that you can have your guts available, you can give the guts to Nero, allow her to take the hit, get her guts to proc, and then bada boom, bada bing, the first skill is now live and you have a super fat NP gain buff. But it's a little bit risky because this guts only revives you with 1 HP, so even if you're comboing with her defensive skill on the second skill, and you've even got like other people like maybe Wave around giving her even more defense, doesn't really matter. 1 HP is 1 HP, 1 hit and you're completely knocked out. Unless, of course, you're also taking advantage of someone like Merlin, in which case you can be like, okay, she gets to 1 HP, gets the battery that now allows her to also have the super insane NP gain buff, and then Merlin's kind of like healing her and getting her back up to health. He has the second skill that can kind of like also buy her an extra turn of healing, stuff like that. You can do certain things like that, but realistically, I know a lot of people aren't probably going to do that. They're just going to smack this on Nero and give her big ooga booga damage, because this combined with her second skill is a 70% attack buff. Now, ideally, you want those to be different buff types because different buff types multiply into each other, but at the end of the day, 70% attack is still 70% attack. It's still a heaping load of attack on a 5-star servant that has decent stats. You're going to get some decent mileage out of Nero with just this alone, because when you fire her NP, she actually has a 20 to 60% NP damage buff that procs first, and that NP damage buff is going to multiply into that 70% attack buff and is going to allow Nero to do some pretty decent damage. And the reason I also think she's really good for challenge quests is that she has built-in Pierce invincibility into her NP that lasts the entire turn, meaning not only does her NP get around dodges and invincibilities, but any of her following cards will as well. So let's say you're doing a really fat Buster Brave chain with her. Not only is the NP going to smack the enemy, but all of our following cards are also going to smack the enemy as well, and it just makes Nero just generally a good servant. You'll see that her damage is just pretty decent for what you're getting with like the 50% battery, the fact that she's pretty self-sufficient, giving herself the attack buffs, the NP gain buffs, has both defense and a guts, and is able to kind of alter her own class's advantage with her second skill. It just makes her a really, really solid servant. Now, in all reality, should you go for Nero over someone like Space Ishtar in a couple of months? Probably not, because, Space Ishtar is a bit more valuable of a servant because she can be your Buster farmer, your Quick farmer, or your Arts farmer, right? She can fulfill so many roles for your account, but maybe you're not a huge Rin fan. Maybe you're like me and you're incredibly based and your team Saberface and you want to get yourself Nero. And in that case, by all means, go ahead and summon for Nero. I just ask you to keep in mind of all the other broken servants we're going to be getting for the rest of the year. Remember that Muramasa comes out for New Year's. Remember that Super Orion also comes back for New Year's. I know a lot of people are really looking forward to trying to get him again when he comes back. Just keep all that in mind. You know, like Maid Alter, another Saberface also coming back for New Year's. Just a lot of good stuff, right? But if you're like more of a whale, or you're more of a dolphin, or you just have a million bajillion Saint Quartz saved up, or Nero is your favorite servant, by all means, you can summon on this banner and do so in good faith, because she's a very, very strong servant, and as someone that's been using her for like the past 2 years, I just couldn't give her enough compliments. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Am I being too generous on Nero Caster? I don't think so. I think I'm giving her a pretty appropriate rating. Really, really strong, but not exactly broken. But, you know, not every servant needs to be broken to be good. Leave a like on the video, leave that comment in the comment section down below, subscribe if you haven't, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.